Good afternoon from Japan. My name is Fernando Palacio, and good morning, good evening, or good middle of the morning from wherever you are joining this conference. First of all, a big thanks to Hong Kong Polytechnic University for hosting this conference, and a big thanks to the University Social Responsibility Network for organizing this amazing opportunity for learning for everybody on issues that are so important regarding how universities engage with society. So today, for this session, which is called Social Innovation for Inclusive Communities, we have speakers that are going to share their experiences on how their universities and their programs have engaged with society. So without further ado, I would like to jump into our first presentation. We will have four presentations here, and we will do the Q&A right after each presentation. So we will have some time for the presentation, and then right after that, we will make the questions for that particular presentation, and then we move to the next one. With that being said, our first presentation today is called Perception of Filipino Private High School Students on Gender-Sensitive School Policies by Melinda Cobar and Lauro, Pacis, and Sofia, Mikaela. I will ask the presenters to give a word of introduction on yourself so that I don't take the time for your presentation. Thank you very much and look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. We are from the Philippines. I'm Melinda Cobar, and with me I have 30 Pacis and Sofia Louis. They are students from the Ateneo de Manila Senior High School. Sofia will share our presentation.
Good day, distinguished guests. We are students of the Ateneo de Manila Senior High School, and we present our study, The Perception of Filipino Private High School Students on Gender-Sensitive School Policies. In the next slide, you will see our movement of discussion.
What is gender expression? It is an individual's choice of how one would display their own gender. This can be typically seen in one's physical appearance or behavior. Next slide, please. Gender nonconformity, on the other hand, is the gender expression of an individual considered inappropriate or goes against typical societal gender norms. This can affect a student's gender expression, which would often result to harassment and violence, among other prejudices, due to policies implemented in school. Next slide, please. Gender sensitivity is the response to gender-based injustices like sexism and inequality, among others. Gender sensitivity serves as a tool to better understand gender and create understandings among different genders. It is important because it is the key in making society more inclusive, especially towards the prejudiced. Next slide, please. The role of school policies and practices. Study shows that school policies regarding gender sensitivity tends to have a psychological, mental, and physical effect on the students. However, academic institutions still practice the values of conservatism by way of policing their students' gender expression and identity.
For this study, we came up with 3 research questions. For our first research question, we wanted to know if there are any unnecessary school policies or policies that are needed to be improved based from the students' thoughts or opinions. For the second research question, we wanted to know the most and least important school policies according to the students' perception. For our third and last research question, we intend to understand the students' comfort when it comes to engaging in discussions and topics related to SOGI, expressing their gender expression in school, and addressing code and rules.
Here's the conceptual framework of the study. On the left is the freedom to express gender identity protection from gender-based stigma and heteronormativity. On the other hand, there is freedom to express gender identity, which overlap, leaving gender-sensitive school policies in the middle. Next slide, please. The conceptual framework displays the relationship of gender-sensitive school policies to how students are protected and safe to express their gender identity in a school environment. Furthermore, gender-based stigma and heteronormativity greatly influence conforming of school policies to social norms. Sexuality-related policies can result in either positive or negative effects on the safety of gender expression of students. Lastly, the aim of the study is to address this concern and contribute new understandings regarding school policies that are inclusive to the LGBTQIA+ community.
For the methods in gathering respondents, we requested for submissions from a private Filipino school in Quezon City. Students were also informed using messenger group chats with the link of the survey questionnaire. All in all, we gathered 47 respondents from grade 11 and grade 12 students. We also have the demographics on the gender identity with the answers from the respondents, which it identifies as female, male, non-binary, and agender. There are also answers from the respondents which expressed feminine to masculinity to androgynous expressions.
Four-part survey was used for the data collection. The first part of the questionnaire asked about the demographic profile of the respondents. The second part of the survey contained 5 scale-based questions to assess how helpful gender-sensitive school policies were for the students. The next part of the survey contained another 5 scale-based questions which were used to gauge how safe the respondents feel on expressing themselves under different scenarios. The last part of the survey consisted of 5 open-ended questions concerning the perception of the respondents about current school policies. Next slide, please. One of the ethics clearances for the study was the parental consent of the participants who were minors. An informed consent form was then given to legal adults. Their confidentiality was guaranteed as of collecting their personal data, keeping their anonymity, and the dissemination of any information from the questionnaire. The responses were tallied and encoded using measures of central tendency and frequency distribution in Microsoft Excel software. The gender identity and effectiveness of school policies were analyzed using descriptives, frequency tables, and percentage charts. Respondents' ages and the scaling of how safe they are with the school policies were also analyzed using the similar quantitative analysis. Open-ended responses were analyzed using the qualitative method of theme coding. Word cloud was also used in the process of analyzing open-ended responses.
So the next part is the analysis section for the quantitative data. For the research question 1, we presented 5 scale-based questions in order to determine the school policies that are the most and least important based on the student's perception. Based on the means and modes that can be seen in the descriptives, students think of the haircut rule and dress code policy as not important and slightly important respectively. On the other hand, the anti-bullying policy, code and rules, and SOGI-related talks and seminars all have 5 as their mode, suggesting that they are very important. A more detailed analysis is shown in the percentage chart in the next slide. Here, we can easily visualize the overall responses of the participants on how important each policy is. As can be seen, 44.68% perceive the haircut rule as not important, 31.91% think of the dress code policy as slightly important. Almost all of the students perceive the anti-bullying policy and code and rules as very important, with a percentage of 93.62 and 97.87% respectively. And lastly, 68.08% treat talks and seminars regarding SOGI as very important.
Here are the results for research question number 1. Based on the responses, most students see the haircut rule and dress code policy as some of the least important or slightly important rules and policies in the school. Moreover, talks and seminars regarding SOGI, the anti-bullying policy, and codes and rules were supported by the majority as an important factor in helping a student's gender expression.
For the next research question, part 2 of the scale-based questions tries to determine the level of comfort the students feel while engaging in different school activities. From the 47 gathered responses, it can be seen that most students feel comfortable in engaging in programs and discussions regarding SOGI, expressing their gender expression in school, and addressing code of decorum. On the other hand, most respondents were uncomfortable in opening up to their counselor about topics regarding SOGI. A clear overview of the responses can be seen in the percentage chart. it can be observed that while most of the respondents feel comfortable in engaging in different SOGI-related activities, some are still uncomfortable, while a small percentage chose to rather not say their feelings.
Here are the results of research question number 2. Most of the respondents feel safe and comfortable when engaging in programs, talks, and discussions about topics regarding SOGI, and when expressing their gender expression and addressing code and rules inside the school. However, a small percentage of the respondents still feel unsafely uncomfortable, while some were hesitant and choose not to say their feelings.
From the gathered information, we have generated word clouds for each theme that shows the most frequently mentioned answers from the respondents. For theme 1, as shown in the most frequently answered to in this question, the majority of respondents pointed to the dress code and haircut policy as limitations on students' ability to express their gender identity. Additionally, they stressed the need and benefits for a secure and comfortable school environment through counseling sessions.
The responses were categorized from the school policies that hinder gender expression, inclusivity of SOGI in talks and programs, school policies that make students safe, and to those who are unaware.
In the answers gathered for Theme 2, the respondents are mostly stressing that the policies are not enough or effective and need to be improved and given supportive effort from the school. They also want to express that the school should be more open-minded and create an environment that has no gender norm or gender biases.
The responses were categorized from not enough school policies, improvement in policies, and unsure.
From the answers gathered for Theme 3, most of the responses think that the haircut rule and dress code are unnecessary school policies since students hardly get to express themselves on how they dress and style their hair. Restrooms also shouldn't be limited to being gender-specific since it can be a place of discrimination at a point.
Responses categorized as the specific policies that are unnecessary, no unnecessary policies, and needs enlightenment.
In the answers gathered for Theme 4, some respondents think that the school policies educate their students enough about SOGI with the presence of the school organizations like Lakambini and Mayari, also with other school programs or talks that educate them about it. However, some are not satisfied and feel like it can be further improved and given more concrete actions to enlighten students about SOGI.
The responses were categorized from not enough, somehow enough, and made efforts to educate students about SOGI.
From the gathered information for Theme 5, they expressed their awareness of the current school efforts that are gender inclusive, but there are concerns of not having enough effective outcome from the implemented policies. Most of the responses wanted an improvement on the dress code policy, typically about cross-dressing being asked to be normalized to freely express themselves. The students also want the teachers and school staff to consider educating about preferred pronouns and continue consultation sessions.
Lastly, the categories are no need for improvement, inclusive and safe space for all, and talks with students.
Here are the limitations of this study. Number 1, majority of the respondents are female. Number 2, the study focused solely on already existing policies. Number 3, the number of related literature and research conducted about this topic is very limited. And lastly, due to the Data Privacy Act of 2012, the researchers do not have access to the class list and emails of students, and hence, random sampling cannot be done for the study population.
In conclusion, the majority perceive the haircut rule and dress code policy as policies that need improvements or are unnecessary. On the other hand, the anti-bullying policy and the code and rules are the most important school policies. And lastly, most students feel safe and comfortable in engaging in different programs tackling SOGI. What we could recommend to further improve the study is to recruit more respondents from different schools and gather at least 100 participants to answer the survey. The purpose of this is to have a more accurate and unbiased study. Conducting interviews or focus group discussions are also encouraged, as this will help the study to explore more gender-sensitive school policies and practices. Lastly, future researchers can also determine if there is a relationship between the students' perception of school policies and their level of comfort in engaging in SOGI-related activities. This will help the study to get a deeper analysis and understanding of the topic.
Here are the sources used for this study. And here are the team members responsible for the success of the study, starting with 3D High Malin, Van Alcantara, Paula Bugawisan, Sofia Louis, 3D Pacis, and RT Venturina.
To close, we would like to share our personal sentiments as to why we chose to push through with this study. If you have no trouble in expressing yourself, then you are privileged. If you are prejudiced for expressing yourself, we are fighting for you. And if a school teaches us to express our minds, why does school also tell us what is gender conforming or not?
To close, when it comes to moving towards greater inclusivity, it can never be emphasized enough how important it is to comprehend the perspective of our students in this specific study, and in general, the people we wish to make feel included and an essential part in our communities. In our conversations and discussions of gender sensitivity, gender identity and expression, and sexual orientation, we should include the very people who are considered the minority, the women and the girls, the gays and the lesbians, the trans people, and others. In this manner, the laws and policies we make and enact will not only genuinely help them feel like a big part in our communities as they should be, but also establish safe spaces for everyone. We want to make sure that our decision making is based on the actual needs of the community we wish to serve and not merely on our perception of those needs. We must be aware that our conception of gender may be outdated, inaccurate, or damaging. In informal surveys, many teachers still struggle to define the full range of sexual orientation or distinguish between gender identity and gender expression. When we misunderstand or when we continue to be ignorant, we run the risk of mistreating or making our students and other people feel essentially unwanted. But making non-discriminatory laws and policies prevent unjust practices, unequitable treatment, bullying, violence, or ostracism of the members of the community who may be considered different. We want schools to take the lead in initiatives like these because, as institutions of learning, we have the ability to influence people to see different perspectives and issues. People can be convinced that being different is not necessarily a bad thing, and that how we treat or mistreat those who may be different from us can have more lasting consequences on their futures. And that's the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for being with us today. We are now ready to answer your questions.
Well, thank you very much. That's a super insightful research you guys have carried out. I let me congratulate you. Like, I know that this is not an easy topic, especially in conservative settings, like probably some of the places in the Philippines. So thank you very much for your bravery. I think that is very brave that you have carried this out. So with this being said, I would like to invite the floor for questions. At the moment, I don't see any questions from the floor, but we still have a couple of minutes until the next presentation. So if no questions from the floor, I personally wanted to ask you, what was the reaction of the school when you asked to do this? Like, you must have asked for permission to do this in some schools where you did it. So what was the first reaction? And secondly, I would like to ask you, what was the reaction after you did the survey? Like, did you share these outcomes with the schools, and were there any changes at the school? So these are the two questions that I would like to ask you.
Let me go first. Maybe Ferdy and Sofia have some answers later. The school is actually in creating a gender hub. We have steps to start gender hub, protect our students from gender-based violence. And I think doing this research will be very helpful to them as to the directions that they will take with the Gender Hub. And I think the school welcomed this study so that everyone can be more enlightened about our understanding of gender and gender expression. Thirdy and Sofia, you have something else to add to this?
Personally, we are very lucky that our moderator, Ma'am Cobar, allowed us to execute this research, because personally, I really think that it's a very important topic, especially now that progressive ideas are more and more being known around the world, especially in students. And I think the reception of this was very good, because we really saw a lot of support, not just from the teachers, but from the students as well. And it's really seen in our results that this is a perspective that really needs to be talked about, because it can really be it could change a lot of things and help a lot of students in the same way.
All right. I don't know if Sofia wants to make any comment to this, or shall I move to the next question?
Yeah, so to add to what Ma'am and Thirdy said, when it comes to the reaction, maybe at first, like many were confused, as we admit it or not, many people from the Philippines are still not educated enough when it comes to SOGI, or sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. And because of that, they don't see the relevance of the topic. So, but thankfully, Ma'am Cobar chose this topic and allowed us to push through with it. And yeah, so with problems with stereotypes, heteronormativity, homophobia, so we can see that this study is really urgent and important, and that the importance of gender sensitivity should really be emphasized, especially in different conservative countries like the Philippines.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. We are running out of time. I see that there's a question from the floor. It has remained anonymous. I will not pose it as a question for you guys, but I will leave it as a closing mark, because I think it's a very interesting idea. The person is saying, thank you. Regarding LGBTQ policies and other Western countries and the societal values in the Philippines, how do you see gender sensitivity? I think that this is a wonderful question to wrap up what you guys are saying, to leave us all thinking about what we all think about gender sensitivity. So thank you to the floor. I would like to, again, thank you for this very brave research that you guys have carried out. And now we're going to move on to our next presentation, which is, hold on a second. Where did I leave the program? Here we are. So our next presentation is called Blue Carbon Initiative, yes, Empowering Coastal Communities on Climate Change, Adaptation and Mitigation, CCAM, through people-centered programs and policies. And this will be done by Angeli, Lapiz, and Christelle, Juin, Ancha. Please do introduce yourselves and let us know who you are a bit more in detail, so that I don't take more of your time for your presentation. So Michelle and Christelle, the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone from the Philippines. I am Michelle Lapiz, a researcher from the Philippine Center for Environmental Protection and Sustainable Development Incorporated. And with me is Miss Christelle June Ancha, a lecturer of the Economy, Society, and Sustainable Development in Ateneo de Manila University. So in this parallel session, we will be discussing about the Blue Carbon Initiative and what we can do to empower coastal communities using people-centered programs and policies on climate change adaptation and mitigation toward achieving a blue economy. So next slide, please. Blue carbon ecosystems are basically our marine and coastal ecosystems altogether. While blue carbon is the carbon sequestered or captured by the world's ocean buried in marine sediments. These are mostly mangroves, tidal marshes, and seagrasses. 55% of the world's carbon are stored in the marine and coastal waters, basically our blue carbon ecosystems. And with that, a people-centered approach to climate change adaptation and mitigation is important in blue carbon ecosystems. So next slide, please. Where are we now in the Philippine context? The Philippines is an archipelagic country composed of more than 7,107 islands. It is considered to be one of the 17 megadiverse countries in the world, together with Indonesia and South Africa. We are one of the biodiversity-rich countries with abundant endemic species of both flora and fauna, or what we call plants and wildlife. But among Southeast Asian countries, the Philippines has one of the highest mangrove losses, estimated at 30% since 1980. The world has been experiencing the devastating effects of this inevitable climate change, and the Philippines is not exempted from this climate crisis. That is why community or stakeholder engagement plays an important role in ensuring the sustainability of our blue carbon ecosystems. This study will primarily focus on the engagement of samahan ng mga artisano at maliliit na mangingisda ng kalatagan or samaka in coastal governance. This will determine current or lack of efforts to coastal governance and how stakeholder engagement is vital toward attaining the promise of a blue economy. So next slide, please. The case of Samaka. The coastal community in the study site in Calatagan, Batangas will greatly benefit from this study, this research, because this aims to assess the effects of their engagement in the implementation of the Blue Carbon Initiative in Calatagan, Batangas. Moving forward, discussing on the Comprehensive Land Use Plan for 2001 to 2010, it highlighted the development and promotion of tourism, aquaculture, and other commercial purposes with utter disregard to environment costs, and the further displacement of our artisanal fisher folks. Now here, we can see that the local development programs and policies in the municipality of Calatagan, Batangas have varying political and environmental complexity, which often have resulted in displacement of our artisanal fisher folks and farmers per se. So next slide, please. So moving forward to the thematic areas of priority in the case of Samaka, we will briefly discuss about what makes blue economy the sustainable alternative. The blue economy's main components are social inclusion, economic growth, preservation or livelihood improvement, and sustainability of our blue carbon ecosystems, our coastal and marine ecosystems. With that, the study identified 4 thematic areas of priority or concern in Samaka's case, in samahan ng mga artisano at maliliit na magsasaka ng Calatagan's case. First is the economic aspect of it. Many of the respondents pointed out that 2 hectares of mangrove forest were cut down and converted into a big fish pond, and this only happened last December 2020. According to the community leaders of Samaka, it was not consulted with the whole community, and they are collectively against the idea of cutting down mangroves. These development aggressions have entirely altered the coastal and land uses in these, as more and more traditional fishing grounds and foreshore lands are turned into ecotourism and agribusiness sites. So the second thematic area of concern or priority in this case is the biophysical aspect of it. Almost all of the community leaders expressed their concern about the increasing temperature in the area, global warming, basically. They said that because of heat, their catch was drastically affected. Roughly 20 years ago, 10 years ago, fisher folks from the municipality of Calatagan have an average of daily income from 800 to 1,000 pesos. Sadly, presently today, it is lucky for them to get at least an income of 500 pesos a day, and that's less than $10 per day. Seaweed farmers are greatly affected by the heat because according to them, they cannot grow seaweeds because it melts. And most ocean dwellers and marine ecosystems, seaweeds included, are sensitive to even slight or short-lived increase in temperature. This is problematic because seaweed farming is one of their major source of income in Calatagan, Batangas. This is one of the major source of income of the organization Samaka. So the third thematic area of priority is the anthropogenic aspect of it. All the community leaders expressed their concern about the quarrying in the site. It should be notable since its effects to the community are vastly observed. Flooding in the area is one of its negative, most devastating effects. It can be destructive in terms of the aesthetic value, the upland topsoil, and most importantly, the vegetation of the quarried area. This further proves that the claims of the people in the site are valid and has a negative effect on the livelihood of the local community in the municipality of Calatagan. One example, according to Calvan and Ablola, of course, the Samaka served a key role in the cancellation of the mineral production sharing agreement entered into by Asturias Chemical Industries, a local mining corporation in their community, in their area. Through media exposure and countless street demonstrations, the organization Samaka was able to prevent the construction of Asturias facilities and its planned mining operations in barangays Baha and Talibayog in Calatagan, Batangas. Presently, today, the DNR issued a suspension of its operation until matters have been decided by the court. So the fourth and last thematic area of concern in this study that we found in this study is the lack of support from the local government unit and other involved government institution. It is the political aspect of it. Republic Act 8550 or the Philippine Fisheries Code of 1998 should be the policy guideline in implementing fisherfolk settlement programs. Our national government, the Philippines national government, should release a joint administrative order on fisherfolk settlement mandating the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, or DENR, the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, or the BIFAR, and other concerned agencies to work out programs for secure settlement of fishing families. More than 80% of coastal dwellers of these fishing families are living in low-lying fishing areas, and these make them most vulnerable to the negative impacts of sea level rise and extreme weather events. So next slide, please. The study revealed that coastal communities particularly have long practiced the concept of blue economy even without knowing the term blue economy. It also revealed the challenges that artisanal fisher folks encounter, mainly the misalignment among the interests of the local community, the private sector, and different government institutions in implementing development programs in coastal communities. This misalignment negatively affects artisanal fisher folks who make up most workforce of a blue economy. So next slide again, please. So what will happen? What will happen if you let these blue carbon ecosystems be exploited and the demands and the needs of the coastal communities are not met? The people of Samaka are enthusiastic about learning climate change and how to help in adaptation and mitigation practices based on the issues raised by their organization. Most of their calls are about livelihood improvement and better access to the natural resources that they help protect and conserve. There are many pressing issues raised by the organization, by Zamaka, and if addressed, would pave the way to a blue economy in the town of Calatagan, Batangas. Even though local stakeholders have little awareness on the climate change issue, they have rich and on-hand experience in terms of its extreme and devastating effects to the community that is always to be accounted of. Let us remember that when these systems are degraded, when our blue carbon ecosystems are degraded, lost or converted to other land uses such as aquaculture or fish ponds, massive stores of carbon in the soils of these ecosystems are exposed and released as carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and or ocean. And hence, this catalyzes global warming. So next slide, please. So what can we do? What can we do in this case? Mitigation and adaptation are the two main approaches in addressing climate change. There have been potential adaptation strategies to help minimize the risk of climate change, and this is through risk and vulnerability assessment, protection of the remaining forest and rehabilitation of degraded forest lands, improvements in harvesting technologies, and adaptation strategies undertaken by stakeholders, and implementation of integrated coastal zone management. So here we can see the coastal community resilience framework as an integrating framework using resilience in achieving goals set by the organization. We can use this framework in policy formulation, in policy formation that can be adapted to a local setting. And next slide, please. And to truly address the needs of the community and how their quality of living is ensured, these measures are needed to be done. Reinforcement of policies that protect mangrove systems in the area, and creation of policies that are genuinely aligned and anchored with the needs of the local community. Truly, a people-centered approach toward attaining, empowering communities, and keeping the promise of a blue economy. For our last slide, it ends our presentation. I hope you have picked up something from what I presented, and I would like to thank you very much for this great opportunity. Thank you.
Michelle and Christelle, thank you very much. That's really impressive. I have to say, just like I did in the previous presentation, it is very inspiring to see people that are so brave. I think that carrying out a research of this kind is a very, very brave step, because not only you are describing a problem, but you're addressing an issue that can be sometimes even dangerous. So I want to thank you for that special work that you've done and the special concern that you're having on an issue that is not only important to the Philippines, but also relevant to the world as a whole. So once again, thank you very much for not only the research, but especially for the bravery. Now, I would like to invite the floor for questions. As always in this conference, all the questions are welcome to be typed into the small square on the right of the video on the screen that you're seeing. So if there are any questions from the floor, I invite you to type them in and bring your concerns so that we can address them with Michelle and Christelle together. If there are no questions from the floor, I do have a couple of questions that I would like to ask you. The first one is, because of the environment of this conference, because of the relevance of the university role in addressing social issues, what has been the reaction from your university, from the academic environment around you towards bringing solutions? Have you been supported? Have you been neglected? What's the reaction from the university towards these issues that you're addressing?
Should I answer this, Miss June? Okay, thank you so much. Actually, this study is my thesis study. And it was very, let's say, controversial, I guess, because most graduates from our university are working on the government institutions that in my study has, mentioned, like such as the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. And somewhat there's a defense mechanism that they don't want this to be purely, leaning to the other side. They want this to be unbiased. But for me as a researcher, I want to capture what the community is telling me, because what they are telling me is their experience, is their lived experience. This is what's happening on the ground, and I want to tell that story through my qualitative research. It was controversial at first, but there are still institutions that are supportive with these kinds of research. So we're looking forward to other universities to support us and echo the calls of not only the organization that we're studied, but with many coastal communities in the Philippines, because we're an island of many different people. So there are many coastal communities that needs to be present in these kinds of issues. So they need someone to voice out what they need to say for the higher ups, take a grasp of. So yeah, I hope that
Okay,
answers
wonderful.
your
I think that,
question.
yeah, I think that you do. Like I said, I think it's very brave of you, because definitely you are addressing issues that are political in essence, and you are demanding for responses, and you are providing the data for those responses to happen.
Yes.
So this very, very nicely connects to one question from the floor. The question is anonymous, but the question is, did your research lead to any policy changes at the local level? Are you aware of any changes? Wonderful question. Thank you.
Yeah. Actually, that's a very wonderful question. We have recommended policies that should be aligned with the needs of the community. But of course, the bureaucratic processes present here in our country, in matter of years, decades, we cannot say that if we recommend this kind of policy, this will be implemented right away. That's the problem with I think personally, that's the problem that we as Filipinos have to face. We're really great in planning. We're really great in formulating policies. Actually, the policies are there. There are beautiful, amazing policies that is in line with the needs of our community. But the problem is the implementation. How do we implement this? How do we sustain this kind of policies? The problem is in the implementation part. So there are existing policies, but I guess we should strengthen more our implementation and our impact assessment, I guess, our impact assessment to the local community.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess this is the same problem everywhere. The policies may exist, but it's a matter of bringing them into action. So thank you very much again, like I said, for not only your research, but also for the bravery. I encourage you to keep going. I think that this is a very important matter that not only affects the Philippines and your local community, but it affects the world as a whole. So you're setting a very good example of how to approach such such problems of much relevance. So I thank you very much. It's time for me to move on to the next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And,
thank you very much.
Now I would like to invite to the floor to our next presenter, whose presentation is called Building Cohesive Communities, Reflecting on Digital Social Innovation for Engaged Scholarship at Rhodes University in Makhanda in South Africa. Thandiwe Matyobeni from the Rhodes University in South Africa, will be joining us to do this presentation. Are we there? Okay, here. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, I'm Thandiwe Matyobeni from Rhodes University in South Africa. I'm a coordinator in the Community Engagement Division. And what the Community Engagement Division does is sort of connects Rhodes University to the broader community in Makhanda. So today I'm speaking about one of our programs run through the Community Engagement Division, the Social Innovation Hub, and reflecting on how we've used digital social innovation to promote engaged scholarship throughout the university. So the main goal of the Social Innovation Hub is to facilitate community cohesion, to develop cohesive communities. And we consider cohesive communities to be communities who share a vision for their success, are inclusive and embrace difference, and who have equal access to opportunities. And there are supportive relationships existing between these individuals and between different communities. So the shared vision that these stakeholders would have for their success would include equity and equitable partnerships. So working together through collaboration to achieve goals. And this collaboration is transdisciplinary between individuals, between community groups, between institutions, and between governments. And for this to be functional and effective, trusted and supportive social, political, economic, and legal structures are required. Without having trust in institutions, it's very difficult to build cohesion between communities and within communities themselves. So in cohesive communities, universities would play a part in developing communities and in innovation, and in responding to social, political, economic challenges. In this framework, universities would think globally but act locally and be very responsive to their context, to the needs and assets that are in their communities and their surrounding communities. So in a framework of engaged scholarship, multiple forms of community engagement are used in different spaces within the university. So for example, service learning, engaged research, volunteerism, and social innovation. 4 forms of community engagement that are promoted within Rhodes University and through its Community Engagement Division. So engaged universities would acknowledge their role within the quadruple helix model of stakeholders in social innovation. And this model suggests that universities, civil society, so residents of the city, enterprises, businesses, and government and state stakeholders should all have a shared stake in promoting social innovation within a community or in a city like the Makhanda context. So we consider social innovations to be new approaches to social practices that attempt to meet social needs more effectively than existing structures and solutions that are already in place. And it does that by using community assets. So by using whatever resources are easily accessible in the community and by building on skills and strengths that are inherent in the space. Social innovations are designed to strengthen society. So they go beyond innovation, technological innovation, digital innovation, that is in essence for development of a particular technology, to focus on using these technologies and these developments to strengthen and build societies. Beyond this, it also creates a capacity to respond to challenges. So not just providing a solution, but by building capacity and resilience to address different challenges that may occur, building resilience essentially. And it also, a key part of social innovations is that it addresses social challenges from the ground up. So using solutions that have come from people working at the grassroots level, directly impacted by whatever challenge we're addressing. And very often these approaches are novel, new, existing, not existing, but they can also just be novel approaches to existing solutions and technologies as well. So the Social Innovation Hub uses a particularly digital social innovations. So building on the theory of social innovation, DSIs are the process of generating digital solutions with innovative methods to meet the needs of under-resourced or marginalized communities to address these social problems using collaboration. So digital social innovations can be used to promote engaged scholarship in all aspects of scholarship, the engaged research and innovation, as well as in teaching and learning spaces. Digital resources can also be used to, communicate, learn, work, and contribute to addressing the digital divide in educational institutions as well as communities. And in doing so can contribute to improving access to life opportunities and education opportunities. At the same time, digital social innovations are accessible, and they encourage and give an opportunity to have a two-way transmission of knowledge. So not just sharing knowledge with these marginalized communities, but by also providing tools and platforms that these communities can share their knowledge with university communities. So the Social Innovation Hub essentially uses digital social innovations to create spaces, physical and virtual, digital, where communities can collectively reflect on their individual experiences and their experiences of society and culture. The activities and the values of the Social Innovation Hub are aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, so it meets global priorities as well as local needs, and uses knowledge learned from local environments and shares in global platforms and vice versa. Essentially, the hub is a nexus between different stakeholders in social innovation, so across education spheres and community development spaces. And the aim is to improve technological access on 4 levels: material access, skills access, motivational access, and usage access, in order to build communities that can respond to social needs, can be socially innovative, and can support innovations in their communities, which can contribute to building that cohesiveness that we spoke about in the beginning. So addressing Van Dijk's 4 levels of access, to address the concern of material access to technologies, which means, access to the hardware and the internet needed to interact on digital spaces. We have a digital resource center, and I'll speak more about that in a minute. To address skills access, we have various digital literacy programs which train people with basic computer literacies, which are foundations for developing and skills in more technological skills and learning more advanced softwares and tools and platforms. Then addressing usage access. So in many cases, even though there is potentially access to hardware, it's very likely that goes unused due to lack of training or lack of need for it. So through mobile and semi-fixed labs and workspaces, perceived need labs and workspaces, we aim to address the problem of limited usage access. Motivational access speaks to the confidence and willingness to innovate using technologies, and through our digital storytelling program, we attempt to address that barrier to access. So digital storytelling is one of our main programs, and it very briefly is a training program that focuses on making short videos for various uses that use individual experience to speak to broader social contexts, either to create awareness, to promote action. But it's very much a process. It's the process of making that story is very much part of the product or the outcome of it. So it's not just producing a digital story, it's the process of reflecting on your individual experience in a group setting that gives an opportunity to experience empathy and critical individual and collective reflection. And this process has the potential for healing and catharsis for social innovators and stakeholders in community development. Through reflection, through having your voice being heard and having a moment of being listened to, and also interacting with people in similar spaces. The method's very flexible and can be used in community development spaces, within learning and teaching in the university or basic education, as a learner-centered approach to teaching course content, and also opportunity to relate course content to real-world experiences and applications, and also a very valuable tool in service learning for reflections, and in engaged research as a way of sharing research, communicating findings from researchers with communities broader than the academic community who may not be as easily, for whom written reports may not be as easily accessible as something visual and interactive. And also within engaged research, a tool for data collection that can enable your participants to share their story from their own perspective rather than responding to received challenges or questions presented from the researcher. So essentially, digital storytelling, the process of digital storytelling provides spaces for interaction between communities and gives us a way of mapping the social landscape of Makhanda through storytelling. The Digital Resource Center that addresses material access to digital technologies is an equipment library for basic technologies like laptops and tablets. And the idea is that it makes it accessible to people who may not otherwise be able to. They can take things and take equipment and explore the use of them in their own spaces and in spaces of comfort, which is very difficult to do, as 60% of the country engages online or has access to online platforms, but they do so through spaces like workspaces or public spaces, and not very often within their own spaces. And that also limits motivational and usage access. So the Digital Resource Center provides access to basic technologies at limited to no cost, and also has a mobile hub set up where organizations can borrow a medium amount of devices and run training programs with their communities as well. And then we also have digital literacy skills training run through the Digital Resource Center, which provides basic computer skills training and also training in various other skills that can be useful in developing projects for social innovation and community development. So how the Social Innovation Hub is aligned to global goals, we very much speak to the goals, number one, of no poverty, quality education, decent work and economic growth, as well as industry innovation, infrastructure, reduced inequalities, and partnerships for the goal. No poverty, decent work and economic growth, and reduced inequalities speaks very much to our social innovation program and our workshop series that run with innovators that help develop skills that are necessary to, or that can help develop social innovation. So looking at how you can use digital tools to market your innovation or to create communities of practice around your innovation. Quality education speaks very much to the use of digital storytelling within the teaching and learning space, as well as the computer skills training that provides a foundation for engaging with education opportunities more impactfully. Particularly, we've seen over the past 2 years how essential being able to use basic technologies is for quality education. SDG 9 speaks very much to innovation and infrastructure, and in one of the targets speaks to developing digital literacy as that foundation for innovation at a larger scale. And partnerships is something woven out throughout the division that the Social Innovation Hub is a part of, and very much speaks to how the hub is that nexus for engagement amongst different stakeholders. So on the left is the community engagement knowledge wheel, which sort of collects all the different work being done to meet the SDG goals across the Rhodes University, and speaks to how the Social Innovation Hub is aligned to the knowledge wheel as well. So thank you very much. That's pretty much my presentation for today. Happy to answer any questions you may have about the hub or any of the work we do.
Okay, Thandiwe, sorry for I couldn't pronounce your name, your last name in the beginning. I apologize for that. I did do my practice, but when it came to the actual saying it, I was like, So thank you very much, and my apologies for that. But first and most importantly, I would like to thank you for the very interesting presentation. I have to say you have tapped on the very, very core issue of this conference. You're definitely tapping on the issue of how universities engage with societies at the very core level, not only at the core level, but at all levels, meaning from the political, from the policy, from the implementation, from the inclusion, from you have really tapped on all of these issues. So thank you very much. For me, it was kind of a beautiful experience to hear your presentation, because as you were speaking, I was asking questions, I was writing my questions. And then as I was writing my questions, you were already answering them. So I was like, you are really moving ahead of me. I cannot keep up with you, but really beautiful explanation of what you've been doing. We have 4 more minutes for questions and answers. So we have one question from the floor, from Joseph. He says, thank you very much for a brief presentation. How do you see your work in promoting global citizenship education in African countries?
Yes, I think the hub very much leans itself to promoting citizenship in the sense of creating spaces where citizens can create knowledge and produce knowledge on their own terms, using their own knowledge systems and ways of producing knowledge. And in that way, contributing to conversations about community development and things like social innovation in a way that is at the equitable, platform to, voices within the university. Also by developing that basic literacy within digital literacy, that digital tools, are very powerful in being able to promote social justice and be able to promote education. So providing the foundation for being able to access those spaces and creating platforms where people can discuss and have discussions around these issues, I think is how I see us contributing. I'm not sure if that answers.
Yeah, it's a broad question, so definitely it's a broad answer. But thank you very much. That's super interesting. Any other questions from the floor? Please remember that you can write your questions on the square box on the right of the video that you're watching. If you have any questions in the floor, they are most welcome. If there are no more questions, I do have a couple. I managed to keep a couple of questions that you somehow addressed, but I was wondering how you worked in terms of partnerships. How have you engaged with the local communities in terms have you worked with NGOs or with the government or with anybody outside of the program and the university?
Yeah, so within the community engagement division that the ABI is a program of, we have partnerships with various NGOs and organizations, forums in Makhanda that we work closely with, and then sort of help connect whatever area is interested. For example, if there's a division in the university, connecting them up with community partnerships and organizations that we've partnered with. The hub very much works within community engagements partnerships, using existing relationships, and also being open public access to different stakeholders. So we ideally like to have different stakeholders represented in our workshops that we run, but also working with organizations individually as an organization, as well as having spaces of mixed interaction. Yes.
All right, thank you very much. That's a very good answer. And one last question from the floor. I will ask you to keep it short because we need to move to the next one, but I would like to address the question. And the floor, somebody is keeping anonymous, but would you say that is the SDGs education system where local knowledge is shared rather than those coming from outside?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
The question, you may have it in the right side of your screen, but the question says, would you say this is a SDG education system where local knowledge is shared rather than those coming from outside?
I think so, yes. The local knowledge would be prioritized, and would be most of what we do is around collecting and creating a space or a database of local knowledge, essentially, and prioritizing that while also learning from global and other knowledges, but also informing other knowledges.
All right. Thank you very much. Thandiwe, this is, like I said, a very interesting topic. This is something that I am super personally interested, but you very much nailed it on the issue of what the conference is all about. So I thank you very much. And now, because of time, we're going to have to move to the next presentation. Thanks again. And next, we're going to have a presentation called Communicative Blockers in the Virtual Campus in Post-COVID Times, a New Agenda Toward Personalized Virtual Learning Environment by Oleksandr Khyzhniak from Vrije Universiteit in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. So Oleksandr, if you're around there, the floor is yours. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Greetings from Netherlands, Vrije University, Amsterdam. It's very nice to be part of this conference. Today we have a nice in Amsterdam, nice morning, a little bit rainy, but it's warming with the help of this conference and because we are taking part in this conference. I'm very glad to share some ideas and some results of several surveys that were done during the last 5 years in Ukraine, because I'm originally from Ukraine, and share these results with our community in order to discuss the future of education and actions for a sustainable future. Today, I just want to be sure whether my presentation everybody see now. Yes? Okay. Is it okay? Do you see my first slide? I hope so. So I will try to continue. So the plan for today, I want to stop on 5 moments during my presentation. I want to make some short introduction to the topic. Then I want to offer for our discussion a basic concept or basic assumption that we can name as a basic concept, as a scheme, how we can learn and how we can study this issue. Then let's speak about methodology and those methods and surveys that are our base for our research. After it, I want to share with key results, and let's do conclusions together that we can point. Contemporary virtual campuses as in newly emerged spaces can provide access to educational, scientific, and recreation services of modern university. Students demonstrate high readiness and as representatives of the digital generation for e-learning as a ground for developing virtual campuses. Virtual campuses in a higher education system requires the design of an appropriate educational, scientific, and recreational environment based on one hand on the latest informational and communicational technologies, and on the other, the fitting the sustainable development goals as a key priority. In this case, we can say that today most studies that are dealing with this issue sometimes more focused on the technical and technological issues on introducing or implementing electronic learning technologies, or for example, computer technologies in education, and the cause of number of social problems that are not well understood by scholars. That is why we want schematically to offer you some basic assumption that we can use during our presentation in order to discuss these arising communicative blockers and how we can overcome and deal with them. We use a competency-based approach to higher education, and we suppose and we proceed from the fact that in its realization, the leading role is played by educational communication, which can act as communicative barriers to this introduction to the latest information and communication technologies into educational practices. We conventionally divide communicative barriers for the development in the virtual campus and the electronic learning technologies on which it is based into technical on one hand and motivation competency based, as you can see on the screen. So the justification of the approach is that virtual campuses in higher education system require the design of an appropriate virtual education environment based on the latest information and communication technologies. However, there are not enough technical resources to operate the virtual campuses. Educational activities of subject, primary students and lecturers is needed in the virtual space, which must provide the relevant, motivational, competent resources that these entities own. Technical barriers are associated with an insufficient level of technical support for the use of, for example, e-learning technologies in higher education. The technical basis for the implementation of e-learning in the university is its information environment. On the other hand, motivational competent barriers arise in a situation where where on the way of e-learning technologies introduction, there are inadequate motivation. For example, interning and encouraging using e-learning technologies, and the low level of communicative competences, for example, from students or lecturers or other support staff, which refers to the quality of individual that promotes adequate understanding in the process of social communication in various social cultural environments. In this case, I want to present some results that we received from the two surveys that were implemented. The first one in 2016 that we can say and name as a pre-COVID study, and the second one that we implemented and it was started in 2020 during the corona and ended at 2021 to justify the situation in Ukraine, what was happening with introduction of new technologies and formation of a new environment that we can name as newly emerging virtual campuses, and what communicative blockers could be and arise according to the experts' evaluation. During the first survey, as you can see on the slide now, that was implemented in 2016. It was an expert survey. We had experts from 42 universities in Ukraine. More detailed characteristic, if it will be needed, I can provide after the presentation about criteria and all other issues concerning this study. The second survey we implemented with 3 groups. It was that we studied with the same methodology. I mean that we studied in 2021. We have the first group was a group of students. The second group, it was representatives of the teaching staff or our lecturers, mostly it was professors or associate professors, and 72 experts that were representatives of different bodies, different organizations as stakeholders of higher education system of Ukraine. So, what results we received according to this, and I want to present these results according to our basic concept or basic assumption that we can name according to the topic of our presentation. First of all, let's focus on technical blockers that were arised. I will show just general figures, and I want to comment some of these figures. In 2016, we can name that our experts, according to their evaluation, mentioned as a pre-COVID period that the biggest issue and the biggest problem, the challenge, it was as the technical problems, it was digital equipment of the classes and rooms and access to Wi-Fi in order to provide contemporary and modern technologies. Of course, it is access to electronic resources of the library as a 3 key priorities. But nevertheless, the necessity of introduction such an ordinary thing that we can name now as corporative email. It was an issue 5 years ago that for now at least in 2022 was almost solved. On other hand, we decided to use and to make factor analysis using the method of Varimax rotation. According to the expert reviews in 2016, I just presented the general results, and as a result, we received 4 factors that can influence and we can name according to our analysis of the situation. According to the results of the expert survey, conducted as a factor analysis based on frequency of certain learning technologies used in Ukrainian university by means of the main component method. As a result, a multi-factor model was obtained with a total dispersion of more than 60%. The first factor that we can name is the access to the educational materials online via the internet. The second, that it was 5 years ago. It is traditional electronic communication. The third, access to educational materials in traditional form of internet. And the fourth, mobility in managing access to academic courses. On the other hand, in 2021, when we were studying, we can generally say that hierarchy of problems and issues were almost the same, but the urgency and the level of problematization of these issues were lower. So most of the issues were partly solved during the corona issues. On this slide, you can see the general questions that is concerning the answers, distribution of answers of students and staff in 2021. Do you support the idea of actively introducing electronic education and its technologies into the educational process? And as you can see on the slide, that mostly students are supporting, 3 or 4 students support this idea, and professors and lecturers are not so convinced and divided in this issue. The same situation about the role of motive competent blockers that could arise in the same issue. In this slide, on this slide you can see the influence and the index of those factors that could influence on introduction of e-learning technology in Ukraine by certain communicative blockers. As you can see, according to these factors that we received in 2016, so as a pre-COVID, we can name it as the most important thing was the absence of necessary technical means in the university, and lecturers insufficient motivation, and lecturers readiness to use mass open online courses, for example, and of course lack of electronic course books, guidelines, software, and so on, so forth. According to this assumption, we decided to make the same factor loads Varimax rotation, and the next results we received. The first factor that mostly influenced before the corona is the absence of necessary skills for both students and lecturers. The second factor was the undevelopment of information infrastructure, and the third is the absence of motivation for e-learning technologies and is disadvantages of technical equipment and software for e-learning. In 2016, we can name the situation changed. Generally speaking, on this slide, finishing our presentation, we can name pluses and minuses, the advantages and disadvantages of introducing these technologies. As a plus, or what advantages, what can you name as advantages for electronic education? Students, first of all, mentioned, of course, it is a possibility to connect labor, your possibility to work and to study. And of course, it is economy of time. On the other hand, you can see that the disadvantages, it is, of course, technical problems and problem of motivation and discipline. In this case, we can say, as a conclusion, creating a virtual campus is a common spread practice in education practices. However, universities still lack the appropriate technical environment, modern computer technologies. E-learning technologies as education innovation are promising in higher education institutions, provided their benefits are perceived by the subject of the education processes. The virtual campuses of higher education can combine competition and cooperation in the global educational space. Virtual interactive campuses that can bring academic communication to a new level are on demand. For example, Ukrainian higher education system is on the verge of creating a virtual campus in the form of platform for several universities with joint academic and scientific projects. This will be greatly contributed to by overcoming certain communicative blockers. Thank you for your attention and ready to answer the questions.
Okay. Oleksandr, thank you very much for that presentation. That was really interesting. That was definitely eye-catching. I definitely think that Ukraine is perhaps one of the most important labs for whatever is happening in the world today, like not only because of the COVID, which affected us all, but obviously the conflict in the armed conflict in Ukraine is going to bring up a lot of new research and a lot of new learning the hard way. So with that being said, I would like again to thank you for your presentation. I think that this is a very interesting topic that you're addressing, the differences between something that we assumed was the only problem, which was technical, and obviously there's something else. There's something else that you very clearly demonstrated, which relates to the motivational side of how learners engage and how universities engage. So I think that you're tapping on a very, very relevant matter, how we address the issue of motivation. So if there are any comments from the floor, we don't have much time because we need to move to the next session. There's a comment on the floor. Happy International Students' Day to everyone. So that's the only comment I get from the floor. But if there are any questions, we'd be happy to address them. If there are no questions from the floor, one quick question that I would like to ask you is, when you talk, like you have shown us the difference in problems between the technical motivations and the motivational aspect of the motivations, even if it is redundant. How would you say universities can address the issue of motivation? How can the motivational factor be pushed so that we can engage more?
I think, thank you for your question. First of all, it should be studied the agenda, and as for me, it is it should, as assumption, should differ from universities to universities and to those communities that are formed in universities, because there are different motivation and different needs and different evaluation could be studied, for example, from the students and as the key stakeholders, what they are waiting for, why they want to support or they don't support these ideas. So in different situations, first of all, we should study why it is important for students, for example, to have distance or creation of virtual campuses. For example, in Ukraine, one of the crucial moments after COVID time, it was the possibility to work and to earn money for students in combining with the educational processes. In other situations, in other countries, the motivation could differ. So the university should react differently according to those situations that arises in the territory on that country. But the most one more issue that we did not want to present now, but I think it's more crucial that we faced with, especially before Corona period, it's academic barriers and academics that make a lot of barriers to implement this system. So those who could overcome these academic barriers of creation were more successful. The war, as you said, make a new agenda for Ukraine too, and I am sure that after COVID period and Ukraine as one of the case could bring a new model of such a virtual campuses that could be studied and presented in order to be sure that the sustainable development could be implemented nevertheless of those challenges that exists.
Yeah, clearly this is a change of, it's a cultural change, no? It's a mindset change. So thank you very much for approaching that issue. Like, I think it's super, super relevant. Well, we're running out of time, but I'll give you, there's one question from the floor that is anonymous, but it's, is there any non-study activities at virtual office? If you can keep it brief, I would thank you.
Can you repeat one more time, because I didn't read this?
Yeah, the question is on the side on the box side of the right of the video that you're watching on the platform. But the question is basically, is there any non-study activities at virtual office?
Yes, it's crucial, important, as we pointed at the introduction, because virtual campuses, sometimes it's a mistake when it is focusing only on educational sphere. We are sure that universities should at least combine, of course, according to the specific of higher education institutions that are established, but generally we are speaking about education, about science and non-educational activities that should be provided as essential part of these activities. And this work should be done essentially in order to provide the complex and implement the mission of the higher education. So it is crucial important, if speak briefly, as I mentioned at the beginning.
Thank you very much. Well, thanks for being brief, and thanks for addressing all the questions. And more importantly, thanks again to you and to all the speakers in the session for sharing your experiences and your research. Like I said before, I think it's super important that universities engage with actual issues. So you have demonstrated that universities are actually doing it. So thank you very much. Oleksandr, for yourself especially, and for all the people from Ukraine, I believe that most of the audience will be sharing their encouragement and stay strong. And we hope to see things being resolved peacefully very soon. With this being said, I would like to wrap up this session, again, with a big thanks to the presenters, but also to the Hong Kong Polytechnic University for organizing this conference, and for the University Social Responsibility Network for bringing everybody together to have this amazing, amazing event happening. So thank you very much. Please stay tuned. There's more to come. There's more information. There's more sessions coming. So please stay tuned, and we look forward to seeing you in the next sessions. Thank you very much.